Welcome, everyone. This is the CES virtual set of panels that we're doing this year as part of Digital Hollywood. And we have a wonderful panel today, sort of a reconvening of our usual panel live at CES, but now taken into the virtual world. Maybe we should have all done our own avatars and so on, and had to put on our VR goggles ourselves and done it in an interesting way. But this is the part of the Immersive Media Leadership Think Tank covering XR, VR, AR, and we have a great set of panelists with us today. So we'll kind of go down the row first and do introductions, if you guys don't mind, and then we'll dive into some questions and we'll begin. So Patrick, if you don't mind kicking us off, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you work and what you're working on, and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. Nice to see everyone. I hope everyone had a great holiday. So Patrick Costello, I'm a business development lead at Qualcomm for our XR group. I've actually been with the company for going on 20 years, so I've seen a lot of ups and downs at the company, mostly ups, thankfully. I've worked on a lot of different things at Qualcomm. So my role as BD lead for XR basically means that every day I get up and I talk to OEMs and in the region and independent software companies, hardware companies, content providers, wireless operators, anyone and anybody really who's really focused on contributing to the health of the XR ecosystem. XR is something that Qualcomm's been working on for a long time, actually. Back since really 2009, we've had a big R&D project for XR, and I'll kind of never forget the first demo I saw for an AR demo, where there were two demos actually. One, we had our R&D group was held up a tablet, and they basically captured a room and did 3D reconstruction of some objects in the room, which was fascinating to me. And then I saw another demo where one of the engineers just put a cylinder shape on the table, and then there were some augmented reality vines that grew around that cylinder shape on the table. And of course, I didn't understand the engineering behind it at the time, but I was taken right then, and I knew that I was kind of looking at the future. It just seemed like magic. So I knew I wanted to be involved with XR at that point on. So. It's a long-winded intro. But.
No, it's great. It's kind of cool that the technology's been around a while, and I mean it's cool to see all the evolution. So, Kristen, do you want to go next? Or sorry, Christina. Apologize.
Oh, no problem. Yes, I'm Christina Serafim. I am managing director at Verizon Ventures. Verizon Ventures is the VC arm of Verizon. We work with all of the different Verizon business units and technology units in order to make investments, equity investments in early stage startups that have a strategic fit with Verizon's strategic objectives. Early stage for us means a lot of companies that are in the either late seed stage to Series B. I particularly myself, I focus a lot on immersive tech, AR, VR, XR, with use cases and implementation on both the consumer side as well as the enterprise side.
Terrific. Well, I look forward to hearing about some of the companies that you guys are working with. Jason, you want to go next?
Sure. So my name is Jason. I'm a creative director here at Microsoft. I work for the mixed reality capture studio team. I've been at Microsoft, sort of like Patrick has been in his place. I've been at Microsoft for over 20 years. Spent the first part of my career in the game studio that was responsible for Flight Simulator, which has been awesome to see come back again, especially on the reverb. That's a shout out to Joanna. I've been involved in sort of making or recreating some form of the real world around us basically my whole career. For the last 12, 13 years, I've been involved first through Microsoft Research and through other places in doing sort of novel technologies, face tracking for animation and puppeteering. But really for the last over a decade, I've been working on volumetric video, holographic capture. So that sense of when I was thinking about what Patrick was saying, like, hey, he got a chance to see some stuff early on. I got an opportunity to see HoloLens in the very, very, very earliest days when it was on a bench, and HoloLens blew me away. I knew it was the future, and then almost within 2 weeks after that, I got exposed to the volumetric video capture, and I knew that that was the, oh, here's how we're going to get people into XR. And so ever since then, I've been locked and loaded and been working on that. So you can see one of the stages behind me. It's not a real stage, it's a 2D version. But part of our job and part of what I do is to help empower creators across the globe to make content for a cross-platform immersive AR, well, what we call mixed reality across the board.
Awesome. I just want to go into that stage and pretend to be beamed up onto, the captain's deck on Star Trek. So, Leslie, welcome. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Leslie Shannon. I'm Nokia's head of ecosystem and trend scouting. And so many of you may know Nokia from the phones that we used to make. We sold that business to Microsoft back in 2013. And the business that we continue to be in, Nokia is actually a 150-year-old company. Just, what? And I've been with it for 20 years. And I've always been on the network side. We make the network equipment, the literal base stations that go on the poles that the phone companies buy. So we're business-to-business organization purely now. And the phone companies of the world are our main customers. And but my role, since I have been in the company for 20 years and I was at headquarters in Finland when the whole phone thing kind of fell apart, one of the contributing factors of the phone aspect falling apart was that once they reached a certain level of market share globally, the phone guys stopped paying attention to what was happening in the world around them. They were kind of like, well, we know everything now. And so they weren't paying attention to competitive stuff, but they also weren't paying attention to cool stuff that was going on that they could have leveraged. And so, we've really taken that message to heart. If you have to fail so spectacularly, at least you can learn from it, right? And so part of my role is to look at new developments in technology outside the world of telecommunications that will require some kind of telecommunications support. And so there's a whole raft of stuff that is being enabled by 5G. And AR and VR are absolutely front and center. So I spend a lot of my time looking at things like robotics and drones, but personally, AR and VR is where my passion is. I'm a very heavy personal VR user. I do all of my fitness in VR, and this year during lockdown, I've lost 15 pounds. And so, shout out to Supernatural and VZ Fit. So, woohoo!
Awesome. Well, welcome back, Leslie, to the panel as well. Joanna, do you want to go next, and we'll wrap up intros? Thanks.
Great to see everyone at virtual CES. Sad not to be there with you all in Las Vegas this year, but good to see everyone on Zoom and be connected in this virtual way. My name is Joanna Popper. I am at HP. I'm coming up on my 3rd year at HP. I'm on the virtual reality team. I joined HP to lead up our initiative specifically around virtual reality and location-based entertainment. But for about the last year and a half, I've been focused more broadly just on our go-to-market for HP and all of our products for virtual reality. So we recently launched the HP Reverb G2, which is our 3rd headset. It's together with great partners at Microsoft and Valve as well. So our 3rd headset we did with Microsoft, our 1st headset that we did with Valve. We're really thrilled about it. It's a very high resolution, high performance headset, and the demand has been fantastic. So we're working really hard on shipping those out the door and getting them to all the customers who want them, which has been really great to see. And then we have a 2nd headset that we are launching this year that will be coming soon, called the HP Reverb G2 Omnicept Edition, that builds on the great hardware that we have on the G2 and adds to it biometric sensors. So we'll have pupillometry, eye tracking, heart rate sensors, and face cam. So you'll be able to used it for lots of different use cases. The first use case that we're looking at is around learning and training, and it will launch with a software package package, in addition to the hardware, of cognitive load when it launches this year. So really, really excited and thrilled about that. So my job is, working with been building up our customers, launching our products, and helping with, getting VR to people who are using VR to learn, to collaborate, to connect, and to create. And so we're seeing very, very much acceleration in the interest in VR this year. And our company is 82 years old now, since everyone talks about how old our company was. As I said, I've been there 3 years. I was previously at NBC Universal and a variety of other places, but I was at NBC for nearly a decade, about eight and a half years. And I've also worked on, extensively on the content side. So we've worked with a number of really exciting VR projects that premiered at different places like CES or film festivals, and recently participated in Finding Pandora X, which got a Golden Lion at Venice for Best VR Experience. So excited about coming into that as well.
Congrats. So, all right. So now we know everyone's here and what everyone's backgrounds are, and got some folks that like Patrick and Jason have been there forever at their respective companies. So you guys have seen it all. So I'm gonna kind of dive in. I'm gonna pick on you first, Patrick, and then we'll kind of go through everyone. On the prep call, I was kind of asking this question because it felt like there was more of a focus on AR this year rather than VR. And I know, I'm sure Joanna probably has a strong opinion back against that. But I would love to get a sense from you and then the whole panel on, what's really the state of the state here around AR versus VR? Is there, sort of more work to do with AR than VR? So AR is more, top of mind to people, or is VR just, it's already been done, so it's kind of mainstream now, so it's just, lightly iterative? Kind of what's your take on the state of the market of AR versus VR? Sort of, what's exciting in one versus the other, and kind of what are the key use cases that you're seeing? And so we'll start with you, Patrick, and then we'll kind of go across the row and discuss from there.
Yeah, sure. Lots to unpack there. I guess I would say I think there's a lot more to be done on both AR and VR. I think VR captured the imagination of the world early on. Really, I kind of think of the acquisition of Oculus by Facebook as sort of the big bang moment that happened. That sort of the universe started spreading out after that. And of course, Oculus and Facebook deserve a lot of the credit for the awareness of VR and certainly the scale that it's achieved today. On the consumer side, obviously, a lot of great things happening on the enterprise side with VR, which I'll let Joanna address that, the great work they're doing there. I think the recent, I guess maybe if there is more conversation around AR today than there has been, it's probably because the general assumption that people make is that AR has the ability to achieve mass scale in a way maybe that, unlike that VR might not have that ability. Certainly a lot of technical challenges remain, but I think it's, and also in the background you have these huge platform companies, right, that are very active in the M&A space, that are very active in the hiring and research space, that are investing billions of dollars. The drumbeat of what's Apple going to do keeps getting louder from month to month. So I think a lot of the conversation is turning to AR because you can sort of project into the future and say, hey, one day will I be able to replace this thing with something that I wear on my face? And that day could come, or it could be a really highly scaled one-for-one companion device with a smartphone. But that's sort of the holy grail that most people are chasing, I believe, and why the percentage of conversation capture is sort of tilting towards AR for the most part right now.
Yeah. Joanna, do you want to go next? Because I know you guys are so focused on VR right now, but where does AR versus VR fit into the HP spectrum of products and services that you guys are doing and who you're interacting with?
Well, I think, clearly AR is important and relevant, and we see it as a spectrum. If you think about each of the companies, they're has taken a I would say most of these companies see immersive computing, which is AR and VR is the future of computing, and then each company has focused their strategy on a combination of where they see the market going, as well as where their own existing strengths are. And so for HP, if you go back a couple of years ago when our team was formed, we what was HP really good at that point? Well, HP was really good at making great computers. And so what was getting plugged into great computers was high-end VR headsets. And so we took that, and from that we were able to make probably the best VR backpack out there. So taking all of our great knowledge on how to make a great computer and turn that into a virtual reality backpack. And so we've released three of those actually into the market. So our current one is the HP VR Backpack G2, and then what are you going to plug in to our computers and into our backpacks? At that point, it was mainly high-end VR headsets. So that's where we went next. And so we've had a good deal of success in those two areas. What I would say is we continue. It's very early, so we've launched a lot of products, but of course there's many more products that we'll launch in the future. We obviously don't talk about any products that we haven't announced, but we're clearly always looking at the market and looking at what makes sense for us to do to continue to grow the market. And so that's what I'll say about that. But as we look at the market, we're thrilled to see all of the different progress that's happened, across the field. And it's still so early, and we see that everything that happens that's good for the industry is good for all of us, right? Because it's a very collaborative industry where our biggest challenge, or one of the biggest things right now, is less about getting X% of market share versus some other company, but more about how do we all grow this industry to what we know that it can be and will be. And so that's where we're focused. There's certainly a big enough pie for many companies to have a great piece of the industry, and so that's where we're focused.
Well, it was interesting, just even in our prep call, we were all kind of commenting that, the panel itself represents what's happening out there. You guys are all one slice of the whole ecosystem around this immersive technologies and so on. That's pretty cool. Jason, coming to you, what's your take on AR, VR? Is there more work that's needed to be done in AR versus VR right now? So that's why the spotlight's on AR, or what's your take on that?
I think you said the word spectrum. I heard Joanna say the word spectrum. We've talked about a lot, Microsoft, we've talked a lot about mixed reality. And the reason for that is that really AR and VR are chained together. And really, because at the core, the technologies and the language of how we build experiences are very similar in the sense of we're building spatialized environments. We're putting content into space and moving people through space. It's a different paradigm than the 2D bezel, than what we're doing right now. And so there's a lot of the technology that we are all in the process of developing, and the story language and the scenario building and the experience building are all sort of chained together. And I think if you've seen AR get some of the press noise at this point, it's probably because the friction to get to AR has been lowered in the last year with things like WebAR and with mobile environments. You will sort of see this cycle, I think, continue to sort of like AR will die down, the AR will die down, which is not really dying down, everything's keeping moving. But you'll see more news about something that will pop up in VR. And I think, as Joanna said, when we talk about it being early days, we've been working on these technologies for over a decade. It takes time to get critical mass of content and hardware into channel at the same time. I think if you look back in the past at similar pieces, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. When I grew up, we had a black and white TV. There had been color TV for more than 20 years when we had a black and white TV, but they were still selling black and white TVs. And we've watched, TV go from 4:3 to 16:9. We're seeing those similar kind of components happen in the VR and AR space. So while AR might get some of the PR this year, I think you'll see the same cycle come back to VR shortly enough. They're chained together.
Very interesting. Christina, coming to you, sort of same question, and then, maybe tying it into, how are you seeing that with the startups that you guys are looking at? Are you seeing more VR startups versus AR startups or vice versa? How would you capture the landscape here?
Yeah, I agree with what's been said thus far. And I also think that it is very much dependent on the use case. Each technology is quite different, and AR is sometimes better to implement versus VR and vice versa for the type of use case you're trying to achieve. We frankly see both the AR, VR companies. And if you saw the keynote yesterday from our CEO, he spoke about that and the implementation of both technologies in various use cases like sports, museums, live concerts. Really, the live performances is one area where we've been focusing on as well on the venture side to complement that overall strategy, corporate strategy. And to enhance and augment the fan experience, whether it is music or sports. Sports has obviously been an area where we've been spending a lot of time and investment from all aspects, because we do believe that 5G is a game changer for the adoption of and the execution of the experience, but the adoption of the technologies of AR and VR, as well as the execution of the overall experience from the consumer perspective. So I've been looking at both. To answer your question, we have made several investments last year that in terms of a company out of LA called Fan Control Football that is also really kind of the next gen in sports, in complement, in partnership with Verizon and our 5G technology, is really going to take that fan experience to a whole new level. So I think that, again, I agree with what's been said, Jason. Agree with you that the friction on VR is a bit higher. From Verizon's perspective, mobile AR is very much of interest, but also VR immersive streaming, live streaming is an area where we've been spending a lot of time in as well.
Great, thank you, Christine. I think we're having a little trouble with your Wi-Fi, your stream, so just as a heads up. Leslie, coming to you. So first, before I ask you the AR VR question, can I get the obligatory answer, quick answer to the does 5G kill people?
No, the answer is 5G does not kill people.
Okay, all right,
right.
Okay, noted. We've checked the disclaimer boxes for this year's CES panel. Appreciate that. So, Leslie, thoughts on AR versus VR? What's driving the adoption of one versus the other right now, and kind of why is the spotlight maybe a little bit more on AR?
Well, if you think about the elements that you need, and just to say, I agree with everything that's already been said, and then to add to it, if you look at the different flavors and the different varieties of AR and VR, and you think of the elements that are necessary, first of all, for web AR, for example, for all of them, you need a device, you need some kind of connection, and you need content. And those are in place. For web-based AR, I've got my phone, I've got existing connections, and I've got the content that's already out there. But these tend to be one-off kinds of things that you look at once and you go, oh, that's cute, and then you don't do it again. Web-based AR is groovy, but it's not really creating the kind of sustained return user experience that we're ultimately looking for. VR, same situation. You need a device, beautiful headsets out there, shout out to HP, great stuff going on there. You've got the content, and we're using existing connections, either a wired connection or a wireless connection over Wi-Fi. The thing is, the next wave of AR, it needs all three of those things, device, connection, and content, but it also needs mapping. It needs 3D mapping of the world around you. And that's the part that's developing now. It's going to be another 2 years before that digital twin of the entire world is out there, that the information is hung on, that can be accessed through augmented reality devices. And so that's the work that's going on right now. Facebook spoke quite a lot about that in their Connect developer event here in September this year. And so that's going to be the next wave. But then the other thing that needs to happen for AR, for head-mounted devices in AR, which is really the thing that's coming next, is, and I want to shout out to Qualcomm here, because you're doing the work to make this happen. It's what I call splitting the chip. It's taking the heavy, expensive chip that's powering these devices and using 5G to basically split it, to put the minimum amount of processing possible on the end device. And this isn't just with, like, you know, eyeglasses type AR. The same kind of thing is powering drones and robotics and all the other things that I'm looking at. And then you use 5G to connect to a big stack of servers sitting in the network. So you've got a longer battery life and a lighter processing on the end device, but ultimately accessing much more powerful processing overall. And that's the thing that's going to unleash AR big time. And so the stuff we're seeing here, this is just a tiny, tiny little amuse-bouche for what's coming later.
You had a lot of coffee this morning, huh, Leslie?
No, you should see me when I do have coffee.
Uh-oh.
That's a good one.
You work in digital twin and a moosh boosh in the same conversation. Love it. All right, so keep it going here. So what are some of the, kind of, you know, open now to the whole group here, what are some of the real use cases maybe that are driving either one technology or the other, or the combination of both, you think the most? I think, Christina, you started maybe, and you kind of touched on some of the live sports, live event type of stuff. Maybe Jason, coming to you first, and you know, let's kind of go around and talk about this a little bit. But it's really like in my prep work for this, to me, it's so amazing that there feels like there's just so many different use cases now coming out of every little either industry and discipline around this, whether it's corporate and enterprise opportunities to cool consumer opportunities to new apps that are taking advantage of this, really across every sector. So maybe Jason, come to you first, and then we'll go over to Patrick.
Well, you read my mind, because honestly, I wanted to comment a little bit on what Christina was talking about, the music side, when you were asking about the difference between AR and VR. The live music market is something on the order of like $30 billion a year. And I think they lost something on the order of 75% of that revenue due to COVID. And so you've seen a lot of sort of entrepreneurship. You've seen a lot of development and innovation in the live music space, literally over like the last like 3 or 4 months, whether it's kicking off with Travis Scott or DJ Marshmello, to the work that Microsoft is starting to do in alt space. You know, we've done both Diplo at Burning Man, Pitbull did a concert. The point being is that there's definitely a hunger for live experiences that have real people behind them. And I think you've seen a lot of people trying to crack that particular nut. There's lots of different ways to do it, whether that's with a digital double, avatar, twin, whether that's my personal favorite, which is you want real people in your experience, which means real people have some ineffable quality about them in the little things that they do that are not perfect, that cannot be easily built by AI or machines. We are all individuals. We are vast, we contain multitudes. If we're gonna go broad like Leslie, I just try to get as broad as we possibly can in there. I do think that they're actually, when we talk about music and sports, you're talking about fulfilling a human need with the experiences that we bring to people. And at the end of the day, it's not the tech that hosts the experience, it's the experience that we all try to go after. I think the idea that Joanna and Leslie have both done a lot of virtual training this year speaks to that point, right? It's a human need. We're all cooped up in the house and you want to expand and broaden your horizon and vista. And a way to do that is through immersive technologies. And AR can be immersive, it's just immersive in a different way. I went on a large tangent there, Mark. I hope I answered your question, but I got super
all good.
Live music.
All right, live music, I hear you. Patrick, coming to you. What's your thought? Any particular use cases that are really jumping out that you're seeing driving this forward right now?
Yeah, I'll take the opportunity to give a shout out to a couple partners in the context of this question. So you may have noticed that Lenovo announced a product this week at CES, the A3 Think Reality smart glasses. So that's powered by our XR1 chipset in the glass. And really that's just taking a lot of that perception compute and offloading it to that chip. A lot of the, you know, obviously all the rendering is still happening on the PC side or the Motorola smartphone side. But they have a really interesting product because they're supporting now what they call 5 virtual monitors or 5 virtual desktops in space, right? So you can have 5 different monitors out, basically pinned into space and all 1080p resolution. So that productivity use case is one we're really seeing being driven forward in AR. Microsoft's had a similar announcement, I think, with HoloLens 2 and a product they call Mirage, which is, again, that virtual monitor. And I should say Microsoft's obviously a very close partner to our platform, also powers a HoloLens 2 product. The other one, though, that is sort of a smaller, tier 2 partner that we have, but they're doing great things, is Viewsix. They make a product called M400, which is powered by Snapdragon 2, but they've been deploying these products, especially in the European theater, for like knee replacement surgeries and surgeries. So surgeons will put this glass on, and they have the ability to do guided work instructions in augmented reality as they're doing knee replacement surgeries real time. The surgeons have information in front of their eyes. So there's just, there's so many different applications, both AR and VR that are really driving forward, real human needs and human progress. So.
Joanna, what about you? What are some of the key use cases that you're seeing, both on, maybe you can kind of comment on the consumer side and on the corporate side, because I know you deal with both.
Sure. So, I mean, I mentioned earlier, we really see this as the future of computing. So, we expect to see use cases, in the future where everywhere that people are using computing in ways that we know today and ways that we've not even yet imagined. So broadly speaking, sometimes we get the question like, oh, isn't this just for gamers, or isn't this just, just for this? But no, we see it much, much more broadly. So we see, and as I mentioned, anywhere people are, VR really enables you to learn, to create, to connect, and to collaborate. And we've seen all of that this year. Some specific use cases are, around learning and enterprise training and education, students that are learning how to read radiology, how to learning about anatomy, in a medical school education. We see students learning how to dissect a frog. So that's on the learning side. We see product development, automotive, architecture, engineering, construction, using for pipeline review, for designing what a new product or a new construction is going to look like, and then going through that review to both save money, save time, have more efficiencies. We see healthcare, surgeons being trained, nurses being trained. We see it being used even for wellness, for PTSD, for all sorts of different use cases in the healthcare area.
Joanna, just on that note, just quick follow-up to that, because I kind of caught my eye as I was looking over some of the releases. But have you heard about the Nova Sense glove, and are you seeing folks adopting that yet in that sort of healthcare arena?
Well, we're certainly seeing, there's a number of different really interesting haptics and things that are being used, in not just in healthcare, but in training, for first responders and other areas as well. But so there's a lot of really interesting haptics that have been used to further sort of augment the overall experience. And then of course, I mentioned. Some of the areas, but collaboration is another huge one. Now more than ever, where we're all separated, or many of us are separated, but where people still want to get together and review a design, or feel like they're together, or have a brainstorming meeting. We see platforms such as AltSpace, owned by our friends at Microsoft, or Engage, or VR Chat, or many big screen. There's Rec Room. There's some that are more in a professional environment, some used more in a social environment. So we're seeing a lot of interest and use case around around that. Some of them are used for, somebody mentioned Burning Man earlier. Some of them are, used for concerts and fun. We even did a launch for our product, our HP Reverb G2. We did a launch. It was interestingly enough, it took COVID to actually have a VR launch in VR. So, since we weren't going to all the tech conferences and events and film festivals that we normally go to launch products, we did part of our launch actually inside VR. And then, in terms of using VR for entertainment and for gaming, the numbers are higher than they've ever been. Steam hit an all-time high when Half-Life Alyx was announced last year, but then there hasn't been any drop off, right? So you can see sometimes the numbers go up just specifically because of a game, but remained really constant. And most of the social platforms and most of the games at this point have said that they've hit previous all-time high or for concurrent users or multiples of previous downloads. So we've seen strong use cases across the board. What I would say today, when we look at the future, I think that we'll be using VR and AR the way that we're using mobile social cloud today, but for today, where the experiences are most compelling are where having that interactivity, that the game engine brings, or having like a multiplayer environment where you feel like you're really there with somebody, or where you're learning something that it makes a big difference to learn in 3D versus learning in a flat screen, or when you're telling a story and you want the person to be inside of the story and potentially even have some sort of agency as to what the outcome of the story would be, that the way that they do in a more gamified environment. So those are the areas today where we're seeing and then in training where because retention is so much stronger when you have the experience of doing something, and so VR brings that experience that you're actually doing something. So those are so there's a lot of areas, but those are,
it seems pretty broad.
Yeah.
So shifting maybe gears a little bit, coming to you, Christina, and then to you, Leslie. What's needed still, right? We have an ecosystem of partners in essence on this Zoom call panel, and obviously a lot of folks, they're participating in CES, making announcements and so on. And so it feels like we have a lot of the pieces of the puzzle. Are they all there? Are we able to connect all the dots together to bring these things to life, these use cases to life, or are there still critical components that need to be, brought to market? And Christina, I'd love to hear your thoughts, from looking broadly at the market, and coming to you, Leslie.
Sure. I think that we have a version of the pieces of the ecosystem, but I think that and we've had those for some time. And I think as we see improvements on all fronts, on all different pieces in the ecosystem, whether it's for us the connectivity or the content or the device, we see continual improvement over time. It hasn't come as fast as maybe the predictions were, say, a decade ago, but I do think that over time we are seeing consistent improvement that is making that adoption more and more feasible. I think that, and I think I said this maybe a couple years ago at the same panel, that I think it's quite simple, which is the execution, the experience more compelling than the alternative? When the experience is more compelling than the alternative, adoption happens. So even though we have a version, or we've had a version of it, I think there's been friction, whether it comes from content or the connectivity or the interactivity or the device. I think that those elements will come together at, I don't want to say perfection, but at a much better state over time, and we've seen that improvement. And so because of that, we are seeing the adoption. And then I think, the alternative, whether you're solving a problem, I think on the enterprise side, sometimes we see problems that are specific problems that are being solved, like Joanna mentioned, healthcare. One of our investments is in a company that was at this stage a couple years ago, I think, Mediviz, that's doing surgical visualization. So they are using AR and VR. So they are actually solving a specific problem, and they're able to demonstrate that that problem can be solved better with this technology, and hence adoption happens. I think on the, there's still a lot of friction there too, like surgeons wearing a headset. So eventually I think we are going to see that form factor being a lot more easier to use while somebody is, say, performing a surgery. On the entertainment side, it's about engagement. So can the engagement be more compelling, more interesting, more immersive? And in areas like sports or music, and in part due to the pandemic, we are seeing that ability, immersive, providing that ability to consumers and to fans. So that's kind of, I think there's still room for improvement, but I think we've made a lot of progress. Yeah. And that's what I think needs to happen. We need to get a little bit further to see that mass adoption happening.
Yeah. Terrific. Leslie, coming to you. What are your thoughts? What still needs to be worked on, or is there enough there?
Yeah, well, I think Christina's point about we have the building blocks in a certain version already in front of us, and it's going to be refinement of these building blocks going forward. But looking truly forward to 2030, when I firmly believe that we're going to have head-mounted devices as our main computer interface rather than these guys. So we're going to be moving away from screen immersion and being looking through the computing that we do. So the computer then sees the world the same way we do. This is going to be a massive, massive shift, and it's going to affect how we experience entertainment and information.
Does that include contact lenses too?
There are companies that are working on that, yes. So, hang on to your horses there. But some of the development that needs to happen is figuring out the kind of context and when is it appropriate to send kinds of things, and then and 5G needs to be everywhere. That's going to be a couple of years. The headsets need to develop. That needs to be a couple of years. The as I mentioned before, the 3D mapping, that's going to take a couple of years. But when we get it all together, and I believe, and actually, Christina, another point that Christina made is that adoption happens when a problem is solved. My guess, and this is a guess, not a prediction, is that people aren't going to put this on their head unless it actually solves a problem for them. That's why AR is taking off in enterprise, because if you have to do your job and and you have to put this thing on your head to do your job, you'll put it on your head. But for mass market, it's going to have to solve a problem. Why do I wear this now? It's because I can't see. And so I will put this on my head. And so I think sensory enhancement is going to be one of the key things that's actually going to get people to put these things on their head to begin with. Whether it's vision correction, because Apple has filed a patent on that, whether they're working on it or not, I don't know, but they filed a patent for vision correction. Facebook has actually announced that they're doing auditory enhancement, matching the gaze of the person to, and then amplifying the audio that comes from the thing that you're looking at. And then think about speech to text that we already have. Let's do speech to text for everyday subtitles. So now we're starting to get a package that's a sensory enhancement package that means I might put this on my head. And the same way that we initially bought phones because they let us make phone calls. I never make phone calls anymore. And it turned into a computer that we carry around with us. I think we're going to see the same thing here. We're going to put these things on our head for sensory enhancement purposes, and then we're going to discover all the computing for information and entertainment. And that's going to be the way that augmented reality develops.
Got it. Awesome. It is kind of amazing because now I get freaked out when someone calls me on my phone because I usually
it's like, who's that? Yeah.
Where's the Zoom button? So unfortunately, team, we're almost out of time. 45 minutes goes fast here. So you guys are awesome at predicting what's coming next and so on, and commenting on where we're at. So this is pretty cool. The thing I just wanted to wrap up with, give everyone a couple quick seconds, so to speak, on what's your final thought? What would you tell the CES audience that they should be on the lookout for, and kind of what should be their North Star as they go into the rest of this year and into the following year, and hopefully be back together, obviously in person in 2022 to talk more about this. But Patrick, we'll start with you. What's the takeaway from all of this for you, for folks?
Yeah, I would say to just sit back and be patient and get ready for some really amazing stuff that's coming, because you know, I kind of look at this market as almost like, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but I used to play a lot of that board game Risk with my brothers when I was growing up, right? So there's armies being amassed right now, massive armies being amassed, and alliances are being forged, and there's a lot of amazing things coming. And you know, I think one of the questions, the prep questions was, you know, is VR market mature? And, you know, by no means is it mature. I mean, if you look at many products, we're only on the second generation of products. So it's like, you know, when you got your second cell phone, you know, was that a mature device? So we have so much more room for improvement. Leslie mentioned just one thing, and I'll just reiterate. This idea behind 5G is really sort of going to be the lifeblood behind it, right? Because if you think about, you know, your typical laptop might be a 40-watt device, your tablet might be a 10-watt device, your phone might be a 3 or 5-watt device. These glasses, which are going to be 30 to 50 to 60 grams, are going to really need to operate in 1 or 2 watts of power max. So that 5G connectivity and latency is going to be critical. And once we nail that, and then of course the magical ingredient that is really tricky chemistry is that it has to be fashionable, right? Whatever people put on their face, they're going to want it to look good. So that makes the engineering of it all even more complex. So,
all right, Joanna, coming to you real quick. What's your final thought? We're running out of time here, so.
To experiment if you aren't, and to keep experimenting if you are. It's early, but you know, those of you and those of us that are in this early, you know, your companies will reap the benefits as it continues to grow. So keep experimenting, keep trying out new content, keep trying new technology. Sometimes it's gonna be a little harder without being live, but make that concerted effort to keep experimenting. 1 and 2, I hope we get to all see each other live next year at CES.
Yes, good. Jason, quick final thought for you.
Oh God, there's so much stuff because so many people said such great things. 60% of the population wears glasses already. It approaches 90% as we age. So there's a built-in market for people putting things on their face. I think you're going to see that the velocity of content creation increases, and that's going to be an exponential growth. Patrick mentioned early stage phones. First iPhone had 6 apps on it. It didn't do very much, and it didn't break free until the App Store really actually took off. You're going to see the same kind of thing happen here in the space. And to Joanna's point, when we spatialize experiences, we engage more of your brain. When we engage more of your brain, you learn more, you engage more. You can't multitask your way through that on a phone. So I think the built-in human need meeting there is there.
Cool. Boom. Christina, coming to you. Quick final thought.
Yes, yes, I agree with everyone. Keep the options open and imagination open. I think for different use cases, different form factors will be most suitable. We are seeing also companies like Mojo Vision that's developing contact lens for the consumption of immersive content, as well as we're also, one of our investments is Lightfield Lab, that's holographic interactive video, which it's a video wall. So I'm not saying that there will be one specific winner takes all, but each form factor will apply to different use cases and be optimal for those.
Terrific. Leslie, final thought, and then we'll close.
Yeah, I would say I completely agree with what everybody said, especially Joanna, the get out there and experiment, experience it directly yourself, but even more so, get somebody who's never tried it to try it, because we're all singing to our same choir here. It's until the choir gets bigger, that's when things are actually going to start to shift.
Leslie, my dad has become obsessed with Supernatural.
Yeah, it's unlikely people.
My mom said he's never been, they've been married more than 50 years. She said he's never been more fit than right now.
Wow.
You should see my shoulders, you know.
So this is not really a millennial Gen Z thing. This is really a baby boomer thing that's really going to drive adoption here, right? That's the real final takeaway.
Joanna, you may need to post some video of that, of your dad.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us today here at CES, Virtual Digital Hollywood. I really appreciate your time and input and discussion, and hopefully we will be back together in person next year. Otherwise, thank you guys so much, and have a great one. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy New Year.